and that was just amazing. I mean, there's very little I need to add. I think you've just made the case very eloquently for BDS. If I just maybe tell you a few little snippets of some of my experiences. I've been living and working in the West Bank and Gaza backwards and forwards since 2012. And just talk for a few minutes, and then maybe you can take some questions or have some discussion. And I can't stay very long because I have to rush off to somewhere else, and I know that Clara, I think Clara's going to kill me later. So in 2013, I was commissioned by Norwegian People's Aid. They're a very interesting organisation. It's the development aid branch of the trade union movement in Norway. And it's as if Irish Congress of Trade Unions had its own NGO that's committed to equality and justice around the world. And they commissioned me to go and work with the Union of Agricultural Work Committees in the West Bank and Gaza. And the union is a really interesting organisation for so many different reasons, but basically they're there to represent the interests of farmers and fishermen and agricultural workers. And they were set up at the time of the first Intifada, where people were really starting to resist the occupation of their land. And it was a really popular movement. And what I was doing was I was going around the West Bank and Gaza, meeting agricultural workers. I'm sorry, I have some photos, but on a USB stick, but I didn't come here in time to set it up. So I met the Bedouin community out in the South Hebron Hills, for example. Fishermen in Gaza who are suffering from the blockade. And then agricultural workers whose water has been stolen and are having to buy back their very own water from the Israeli government, from a company called Merkrot, actually. I don't think it's a government company. So one of the people I interviewed, my job was to look and see how we could make the union more effective. And how Norwegian People's Aid could be more effective in their work. And what became very clear very early on, it's like, you can't be more effective, you can't do any more. You know, it's not, the Palestinian people, there's not any more they can do other than, as the play showed us, just remain where they are on the land, live and exist, and through existing resist the occupation. And one person I interviewed actually said to me, he was working in a government department, and I really put it up to him, and he got he was really, ashamed isn't the right word, but quite horrified really, because the government of the West Bank is constrained by this agreement called the Oslo Agreement, which ties them into certain binding contracts, including economic contracts. And what he said to me was, to be a farmer in Palestine, you have to be on your land. To be on your land, you have to resist the occupation. You have to resist when the settlers come to knock down your olive trees. You have to resist when the army comes and closes off your land and tells you that you can't go there. It's now a closed military zone. They resist through the Friday protests and the movement. And when you resist, you become a terrorist in the eyes of the occupation, and you're imprisoned. So I went to the Jordan Valley, and one of the projects was working with areas. Now, Jordan Valley is where the main aquifer for the whole area, it's from the Jordan River, the whole aquifer that feeds Gaza, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank is. And it's in what's called Area C. Now, I know some of you have been to Palestine, so you'll understand this, but just for those who don't. Under Oslo, the whole of Palestine was split into Area A, which is under the control of Palestinian Authority. When I say the whole of Palestine, the whole of West Bank, Area A, Area B, which is joint control, and Area C, which was under Israeli control. It's Palestinian land, and it was to be given back to the PA in 1990-something. And to this day it hasn't been given back, and it's the place where all the action is, because it's the most fertile land, it's where the dates are grown. And in the Jordan Valley, this project was working to support farmers to stay on the land, to to form cooperatives and to help them support each other to sustain through the occupation. In this area, there has not been a new well dug since 1967. That's since the occupation of the West Bank. The reason for that is since the occupation, if you want to deepen your well and make an alteration to it, you have to get a permit from the Israeli government. And needless to say, you're denied your permit. And what happened with settlers is they've been coming into the area and digging wells deeper. So I can't remember, I'm terrible with numbers, but say the well with the Palestinians is typically 500 metres down to the water table to bring up the water. The water table sinking, and settlers are drilling wells 1,500 metres down. So literally stealing the water from underneath the Palestinians. And I met farmers who have land who can no longer farm their land because they can't irrigate it. We met the Bedouin who are now on the most marginal land you can imagine, the most inhospitable place. It was like you talked about the grey stone, there's nothing growing there. And the Bedouin are herds people. They moved around with pastures. We can sort of picture that. But little by little they've been pushed onto more and more marginal land. So now they live in a place you just would wonder how anyone could survive. They keep their goats, but they need fodder for their goats. So the project I was working with was, had set up a hydroponics project. So they were growing, I think it was, they were sprouting seed, bringing it to a certain stage, and out of 1 kilogram of seed you could get 7 kilograms of fodder. The inputs were water and electricity because it's in containers and the lights go on and off. But of course the water and the electricity has to be bought from Israel. The seed has to be bought from Israel. The sheep, the goats come from Israel. They control everything and they control the quality of what comes in. They give the very worst quality. So if you're interested, you can look up economic warfare. One of the Israeli ministers calls it, is honest enough to call it economic warfare. What's going on in Palestine is a colonial project, and don't be persuaded otherwise. It's colonization. It started before 1948. It started at the end of the 1800s. The key landmark is the Balfour Declaration in 1917, when the British government said that the Jewish people could have Palestine as their homeland, and then the state was set up in 1948, and the clearing of people from the land. 80% of the people in Gaza are refugees from what is now the State of Israel. Israel has never declared its borders, and its borders are constantly growing. They are stealing land from the people. What I was going to tell you about the project, the union project in the Jordan Valley, was when I was there, 3 of the staff had been imprisoned. 2 of them were still in prison, 1 had just got out. And they'd been imprisoned for a couple of years at that stage. They were arrested on what's called administrative detention, which means you're arrested, you're never told what crime you're supposed to have committed, and you're held without charge. You're held in prison, and every 6 months you're brought for a review. And it's actually very cruel what's happened, because people are told they're getting out and they arrive up for their judicial review, and they're told, okay, pack your bags, you're off. And they go for the judicial review, and their detention is renewed. And 2 of the guys were still in prison. 1 had been in prison. Very young, the guy who was showing us around, a very young guy. I was so impressed by him. What he is he's a community organiser. He's a country guy. He's an agronomist, and he's an activist in terms of, I'm not talking about bearing arms, I'm talking about setting up co-ops. And these people are all threats to the Zionist project and the colonial project that is seeking to take Palestinian land. So coming on to the BDS movement, we have a lot of things thrown at us. Israel at the moment is investing huge money because it sees BDS as an existential threat. And it's right, it is an existential threat, because our governments have failed to uphold international law. They've failed the Palestinian people. They've treated them as lesser beings, not worthy of the application of international law and human rights law. And what they do is, firstly, the refugees from 1948 have a right to return. To this day, they have not been allowed to return to their homeland, even though international law says they have a right. These are the people in Yarmouk camp in Syria who are being killed. These are the people who displaced people throughout the Middle East, and some of them internally displaced within Palestine, within Gaza and the West Bank. The settlements are illegal under international law, and settlements have been built in the West Bank since 1967. It's an ongoing project, and we hear our government saying tut tut. And what they're doing at the moment is they're still discussing labelling settlement goods. I'll just say that to you again, labelling settlement goods. So settlements are illegal. They're built on stolen land. The goods produced in those settlements are illegal. They're stolen goods, and oftentimes they're produced with the labour of Palestinians who have no economic option other than to go and work in these settlements. And then our government, the EU and our governments are pussyfooting about labelling, and as if it's a really big deal. Well, I said that's not good enough. Our government hasn't acted, the EU hasn't acted, the UN hasn't acted. And when these institutions fail, it is down to us as civil society, because we know, if they don't know the difference from right and wrong, we do. And that's why BDS is so fundamentally important. It is non-violent, it is a mass movement, and it works. It worked in South Africa, and it's working now. And the proof of the pudding of it working is the fact that Israel is now investing so heavily in trying to quash it. And they're enlisting their partners in the US, for example, to bring in laws and calling criticism of Israel equating with anti-Semitism. So I'd really encourage you not to be silenced, to embrace BDS. That means boycotting Israeli goods, all Israeli goods, not just settlement goods, until they comply with international law and human rights law. There's very good websites. PACB is the Palestinian call, the Boycott National Committee. You'll find it on the internet. And really what they're looking is for the right of return for refugees and their rights as Palestinians under international law. It's not a really big deal, and I think it's the very least we can do. In terms of sanctions, we're looking for our government. There's lots of campaigns. The IPSC launched a campaign recently. We buy Israeli military technology. Israel, a country smaller than Munster, is the 4th largest military exporter in the world, and while our governments wring their hands, they'll turn around after these offensives and there's a spike in sales of Israel's military hardware. And Ireland has been buying drones, for example. But not only that, we've been supplying them with component parts. So there's a campaign with the IPSC to end the arms trade. I see Martin with a petition, and I know I'm talking a lot, I'm sure it's past 10 minutes. And then we're looking for sanctions. We're looking for the end to impunity. I worked with another time with the Palestinian, and I continue on a voluntary basis to work with the Palestinian Centre for Human Rights. And Raji Sourani, who's the director there, has said that if the Goldstone report, which was an international report for the UN, if the recommendations of it had been acted on, there wouldn't have been a 2012 war. And sorry, I shouldn't call it war. It's not a war. It's a massacre, an onslaught. It's not even a conflict. It's murder. If the UN had had the courage of its convictions and stood over its own laws, there wouldn't have been 2012. There wouldn't have been 2014. And if we don't act and if things don't change, there will be another one. And that's why it's so important that we as civil society step up to the plate and get involved and do everything we can. And it's not just about Palestinians, it's about all of us, it's about justice and it's about truth. Thank you very much. I have about 5 minutes. If anybody wants to ask questions or make comments, you're really welcome.
Could I just make a quick comment?
Yeah.
No, I just have the petition here if anyone's interested in signing an arms embargo on Israel. I also have some memberships here as well for the FPSC, and we've been board of the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, and contact list if you want to get involved. And I think people should get involved now, whether it's the IPSC or Gaza Action Ireland, SADAC, or whoever is raising awareness on Palestine. I think we should get involved in promoting the boycott.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Has anybody else any questions? Any concerns? All sounds good. All off to The IPSC has wonderful stickers. I have grandchildren who can recognise the word Israel, and it was a sport that I kept hidden from their mother for a while because I didn't think she'd approve in case we all got thrown out of the supermarket. I unleash them when we go to the supermarket to find the Israeli goods, and we stick stickers on. So you might.
We will have some tonight at the writing theatre.
So, and not just boycott, but make your voice heard. Go and speak to supermarket managers and tell them why they shouldn't be stocking these things. And I think as well we need to educate ourselves so that we can argue cogently ourselves, and we all have a little bit of knowledge about the issues. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.